dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original crew? We back with new Mr. Ballen. We got even Skeptics. Can't explain how this man vanished. Hey, I need all my conspiracy theories up front and personal. I need y'all to get your antennas cooking. Need y'all to be trying to dissect some shit. And y'all spam it up in the comments. That's what we here for, you know. We here for the conspiracies on this one. Last week, Mr. Ballen was dope, though. The one he dropped last week, that motherfucker.
It was sad.
Yes. Well, no. I ain't talking about the one we did for Sunday. I'm talking about last Friday.
Which one we do?
Last Friday was the one that got caught at Taco Bell. So how's that?
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah. Mm.
When I meant last week, I'm saying like
yeah.
The one he dropped.
Well, I thought you were talking about the last.
Oh, so hey, because I know some people might get confused.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we dropped the new Mr. Ballens on Fridays, and we go through the archives and find an old Mr. Ballen we posted on Sundays. So if you're ever looking for us to react to a Mr. Ballen joint, if it's something new and it's good and juicy, just know we react to it on Fridays. Mm-hmm. Well, it drops on Fridays. We react to it whenever the schedule allows us. But it drops on Fridays consecutively for months now.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we go and try to find an old one. So if y'all know some old, good, juicy ones we haven't done, spam it up so we can get to it and drop it out on Sundays, man.
But yeah, that one, the Taco Bell one, that was crazy.
That was one of the best ones we had in a while.
It was crazy.
Because I was like, damn, when you see that plot twist coming. So, hey, man, with that being said, make sure you check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go, man. You want a first part? All you have to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
like it with a thumbs up.
I would highly appreciate it. But you ready, girl?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's check it out. Let's see what this one about. Let's go.
Today's video is primarily geared towards skeptics because the story I'm going to tell you today is often cited as proof that we are not alone in this universe, that aliens exist. So, take a listen to the story, and at the end, let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments, and I will respond to as many people as I can. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please invite the like button to come out for a fun night on the town with you, but don't show up and don't answer any of their phone calls or text messages all night. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. On the afternoon of June 6th, 1980, a 56-year-old man named Zigmund Adamski, who just went by Ziggy, was having a late lunch with his wife and his cousin inside of Ziggy's little brick house in the English village of Tingley. That day had been a particularly stressful day for Ziggy and his family because the following day was Ziggy's goddaughter's wedding, and Ziggy was very close with his goddaughter. Ziggy and his wife couldn't have kids because of medical issues, and so his goddaughter had basically become, at least in Ziggy's mind, like his own daughter. And so in fact, at her wedding, Ziggy was going to be walking her down the aisle. And while Ziggy was really excited about this, he was also very stressed out that he was going to screw it up. And so he had gone over and over, what responsibilities he had as part of the wedding party. And he had this little speech he had to give that he had rehearsed 50 times. He had it written out. I mean, he was ready, but he was very much in his own head about something potentially going wrong that he would be responsible for. And on top of that stress, Ziggy had gotten into a fight that day with his cousin because he felt like the cousin was being kind of disrespectful in some way to his goddaughter. And so Ziggy had stepped up and defended his goddaughter to his cousin. And so there was this undercurrent of tension at the lunch table, not to mention this overarching stress that Ziggy was under about this wedding. And so as Ziggy and his cousin and his wife have this kind of tense meal, Ziggy suddenly realizes that he forgot to get potatoes when he went to the store earlier to buy ingredients for this meal. And for some reason, Ziggy decides, you know what, I'm going to just put my stuff down now, go to the store, and get those potatoes, even though at this point it was too late to make the potatoes for the meal. And so maybe Ziggy just wanted to go out and do anything to get away from his cousin for a minute and away from all this wedding planning they were doing and just kind of go out and clear his head. And so Ziggy put his napkin down on the table. He stood up. He told his cousin and wife that he was going out to get potatoes. They were like, okay. And the cousin actually said, do you want me to come with you? You know, like, is there anything else you need to get while you're out? And Ziggy said, nope, I'm good. He grabbed some cash out of his wallet and he headed out the door. The village of Tingley, where Ziggy and his wife lived, was a very safe place. He and his wife had actually moved there after fleeing from Poland during World War II, where both Ziggy and his wife, whose name was Lottie, had been held prisoner at some point. And so after all this trauma of being held prisoner and having to flee their home country, they had looked for the safest, best place to kind of resettle and stay for good, and Tingley was it, and they loved it. Ziggy had gotten a job in Tingley as a coal miner, and he had been doing that for 27 years. As for Lottie, she didn't work because she had a disease called multiple sclerosis, which meant she was confined to a wheelchair. But Ziggy and Lottie had quickly made lots of friends in town who were very supportive, and so it wasn't long before Ziggy and Lottie had a very happy and stable life in this town. The little shop where Ziggy was going to was only about 3 blocks away from his house, which meant walking to the store, getting potatoes, and coming back would only take a few minutes. And so Lottie and the cousin back home, they expected to see Ziggy really come back within 10-15 minutes. But when he didn't, and after about 30 minutes went by, Lottie actually got really concerned because Ziggy was just not the type of person to do stuff unannounced. He was incredibly methodical, he was very punctual and reliable, and so being late from this little trip to the store was just so uncharacteristic that Lottie told the cousin, hey, you go to the store and see if Ziggy is there. See what's going on here. Ziggy had worked in the coal mine for nearly 30 years, and he had some serious lung issues from breathing in all of the coal. And so Lottie was thinking, you know, maybe he collapsed or something along the way from these breathing issues. But when the cousin got to the shop owner told the cousin that they had seen Ziggy. He had come in about 25 minutes earlier. He had bought a bag of potatoes, seemed totally normal, everything was fine, and he had left, walking back in the direction of his home. And so the cousin thanked the shopkeeper and then left and began jogging back towards Ziggy's house, thinking, you know, maybe he had just not seen him on the way, that maybe Ziggy was sitting down somewhere on this 3-block path. But the cousin got all the way home and didn't see any sign of Ziggy. And so after going back inside of the house, the cousin and Lottie talked about what they should do, and they actually went back out into the neighborhood asking around, asking neighbors and other people if they had seen Ziggy. But after a couple of hours of canvassing the neighborhood and not finding Ziggy or finding any indication of what happened to him, Lottie ended up calling the police. But the police were not inclined to launch a huge investigation for a grown man who's only been missing for a couple of hours in his neighborhood with no sign of foul play or any other sign that anything really bad had happened. And after the police began asking questions of Lottie and the neighbors about what Ziggy's life was like, they learned that recently Ziggy had been declined for an early retirement from the coal mine. Because of those breathing issues he was having, he had requested to retire now, but they said no. And so Ziggy was really upset about that. He was really stressed about this wedding of his goddaughter the next day. He had been fighting with his cousin. Also, Ziggy was basically taking care of his wife, who's in this wheelchair all the time. And so because of all these stressors in Ziggy's life, the police started to wonder if maybe it was possible that Ziggy had not been going to get potatoes, but in fact was just kind of abandoning his family. And so...
Not like that, though. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Because if I'm going to do that, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to actually go to the store and get the potatoes.
And not on a day of a wedding, you know, to your goddaughter, and you was excited about it. You wouldn't have just, all right, today I'm been like... Nah, but that also shows the laziness of police, especially back in the day. Police were lazy. You know what I'm saying? They hardly ever did shit. And I guess that's the reason why so much crime happened more. Yeah. Well, I ain't gonna go into that, but yeah. But it's just crazy, man.
been going to get potatoes, but in fact was just kind of abandoning his family. And so ultimately, on the day that Ziggy went missing, the police told Lottie and Ziggy's cousin that they should just sit tight, see if he comes back tonight, and if he doesn't, go to the wedding tomorrow, because Ziggy is so close with the goddaughter. If he's having some sort of issue right now, he's very likely to come back for something as significant as this wedding. And so Lottie and Ziggy's cousin stayed at the house all night. Ziggy did not come back. They didn't hear from him. And the next day they went to the wedding, but Ziggy didn't show up for that either, even though he's supposed to walk his goddaughter down the aisle. And so after coming back from this wedding, Lottie called the police, she called local hospitals, she talked to all of her neighbors. I mean, she really put out like an all-points bulletin to everybody in the area that something terrible has happened to Ziggy and we need to find him. But despite police beginning to lean into this and her neighbors really going out in force to try to find Ziggy, no one could find him. He had just vanished.
Do you think it's a possibility y'all have waited too long now? Cause
not necessarily, but
because I feel like, you know what I'm saying, you have to hop on shit while it's fresh to be able to track any trail. The longer you wait, those fresh trails start to dry up. And it's like, you can't, like, you get what I mean?
Yeah, I get what
like,
you're saying.
you start missing clues that you might not have, because too much time has passed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mind also starts to forget things, or it might be a clue that somebody can remember that if you had asked them that when it was fresh, they might have remembered. Mm-hmm. But the longer you wait, they start to forget things, or they mind start putting a picture of, you know what I'm saying? You know how people always ask, do you remember this day? You like, I think I do, but then a lot of times your mind play like pieces together in a puzzle like it thinks it should be, and not necessarily always what
actually happened.
Yeah, so I think just over time, like, y'all kind of wasted too much damn time.
I feel you.
But
to lean into this and her neighbors really going out in force to try to find Ziggy, no one could find him. He had just vanished. On the morning of June 11th, so 5 days after Ziggy went to get potatoes and then vanished, a man named Trevor Parker got to work at his father's coal yard in the English town of Todmorden. The coal yard was basically just this big open lot that had a chain link fence around it that butted up against some railroad tracks. And inside of this lot were just these huge mounds of coal up against the perimeter of the lot. And then also inside of the coal yard was one small office building. And so on this morning, when Trevor pulled through the gates of this coal yard, first of all, he could see the entire yard the second he went in. And as he looked out, all he noticed was the fact that everything was wet from an early morning storm. And so after just kind of surveying around the lot to make sure none of the coal got blown around from the storm, he made his way to the small office building to do some paperwork. Trevor would work inside of that office building for a while, and then around lunchtime, Trevor decided to just go and get some lunch and kind of have a nice long lunch break. And so he left, he went to the pub, he was there for a couple of hours, and then around 3:45 p.m., he came back to the coal yard, and when he went through the gates, everything looked the same, except there was this dark thing on top of one of the coal piles in the back of the yard. Now, Trevor didn't know if he had seen it when he had first arrived that morning or if it was new, but whatever it was on this pile, it immediately caught Trevor's attention. And so after parking his vehicle, Trevor began walking over to this 12-foot-tall coal pile with this thing on it, and when he got about 30 feet away from it, he realized he saw someone's shoe, that this dark figure was a person, and right away Trevor started rolling his eyes because there was a group of homeless people that lived near the railroad tracks just outside of the coal yard, and it wasn't uncommon for them to get really drunk and then wander their way into the coal yard where sometimes they would fall asleep. And so Trevor's thinking, okay, clearly one of these drunk homeless people has found their way into the coal yard and they've passed out on top of this pile of coal. And so instead of going over and talking to this person directly, Trevor just turned around, went back inside of the office building, and he called for an ambulance. The ambulance arrived a few minutes later. They did not have their sirens on. They didn't come flying into the yard. This was a routine thing they were doing. They were scooping up a drunk and bringing them back to the hospital. And so when the medics got out of their ambulance and Trevor directed them over to the proper coal pile, they were just cracking jokes along the way. This was not a big deal. When the two medics got to the bottom of the coal pile, one of them began climbing up the coal to go see this drunk person and get them down. And so Trevor, as this is happening, he walked a little bit closer, and when he did, he realized that the person who had fallen asleep on the coal, they had really nice pants on, like tailored pants. They were certainly not what Trevor expected this person to be wearing. But before Trevor could even really react to the clothes this person had on, the medic who had climbed up had finally reached this person. They reached down and began trying to move the person around. And suddenly, when they had manipulated this person's body enough, the medic's facial expression completely changed. They went from somewhat routine to totally horrified, and they backed off of this person on the coals. They turned around and ran down the coal, practically falling over themselves. And when they got down there, Trevor heard the medic say to his partner, call the police right now. And Trevor said, what's going on? What did you see? And the medic, who had reacted that way, just shook his head and walked away to kind of compose himself. And so Trevor at this point was starting to get spooked himself. Clearly, whatever the medic had just seen had really shaken him up. And so Trevor just kind of stood there while the other medic ran in and called police. And then a few minutes later, a police car came flying into the coal yard, and an officer named Alan Godfrey, along with his partner, got out of the car. And right away, the medic, who had gone to the top of the pile and been freaked out by what he saw, walked over with a very ashen face, and he told Alan Godfrey that something was terribly wrong with the person on top of this pile. And so Alan, not really sure what to expect, walked over with his partner to this coal pile, and with the medics and Trevor standing back, Alan, on his own, climbed up the coal, and he looked down at this person. And what Alan saw was a man lying on his stomach wearing a beautiful three-piece brown suit. And Alan immediately noticed that there was absolutely no soot from the coal that this guy was laying on his suit, even though Alan, just to get up here, had basically covered himself in black soot. And so he was wondering, how did this guy get up here and not get covered in soot? It didn't make any sense. Right. Also, Alan noticed that this guy's hair looked totally bizarre. It looked like someone had given him like a really bad haircut with dull scissors. Like they just grabbed tufts of his hair and kind of chopped randomly. I mean, his hair was kind of all over the place. There were bald spots. And then as Alan looked from this guy's hair down, he noticed almost hidden in his hairline was this fairly deep wound in the back of his neck that was still bleeding, but there was this weird green jelly-like substance very obviously placed over this wound, and Alan had no idea what this substance was. But as weird as all that was, that didn't explain why the first medic had basically completely panicked and run away. When Alan tried to roll this guy over onto his back to try to wake him up and see if he was okay, he rolled him over, and Alan got a look at this guy's face. And immediately Alan let go of him and kind of had to step back for a second, because the guy's face was contorted in this frozen look of absolute terror. His jaw was open so wide, it was almost like his lower jaw was dislocated, and his teeth were baring, and his eyes were bulging out of his head. And so Alan quickly realized that obviously this was not just some drunk homeless person who passed out here. This was a dead person, and whatever happened to them must have been unbelievably terrifying to leave someone looking like that in their death pose. It would turn out this deceased man in the coal yard was Ziggy Adamski. But this did not solve the mystery of what happened to Ziggy 5 days earlier.
Right?
The whole time they tell him, like, is it a possibility somebody kidnapped him? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Beat him. You know what I'm saying? Possibly he owed somebody some money. There's a lot of stress going on. You never know. He's been working in the coal yard for so long, trying to retire.
Did he have any problems?
Also, his goddaughter, he walking her down the aisle, so obviously her father's not there. Mm-hmm. As part, you know what I'm saying, big present. Is it possibility he had to put money up for the wedding? Or was he helping out? You know what I'm saying? financially. So could he been in a financial bond, owed a lot of people some money? You get what I mean?
Yeah, I get
But
what you're saying.
when you showing like some of the mark indicators, I'm like, acid possibly. You know that like, but how do you? But then like they said, how do you get to the top of this coal and not get anything on your suit?
Right. So who placed you there?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
A top without getting you dirty, or they think or were you possibly in a plastic bag when they drug you up there, so they won't get any fingerprints on you? You get what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, like, you trying to be careful as hell. Like, if you do something like that, you're not trying to leave any fingerprints in your DNA.
Just like.
But are you even thinking about DNA then? Because DNA really wasn't popular back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I'm just thinking. I'm just trying to think.
Trying to just dissect everything.
Mm-hmm.
This deceased man in the coal yard was Ziggy Adamski. But this did not solve the mystery of what happened to Ziggy 5 days earlier. In fact, his discovery really only created more questions. This town where this coal yard was, Todmorden, was located 25 miles away from where Ziggy lived. And as far as anyone knew, Ziggy didn't know anybody in Todmorden. So there was no reason for him to be there. And number two, when he had left to go get potatoes, he had been on foot. So did he walk 25 miles to this random town? Also, assuming he did just walk to this coal yard, this coal yard is a big, wide open lot that if you were standing anywhere near it, even outside the fence, you could look in and basically see the entire place. So it just seemed really unlikely that Ziggy could just walk into this very public open space and get to the top of one of these coal piles without somebody noticing him. Whether that was Trevor or one of the other employees that were there, or one of the truck drivers that were in and out of there all the time, all day, doing deliveries, or the homeless people who were near the railroad tracks, or the people who rode the trains that passed by there every single day. I mean, there are a lot of eyes on this coal yard, but nobody saw Ziggy. It was like he just kind of appeared at the top of this pile. And again, even if Ziggy had managed to slip in and sneak to the top of this pile, why didn't he have soot from the coal all over his clothes? And if maybe he had been brought there, if someone had killed him and put him on this coal pile, there's even more reason he would have soot all over him, because they would have had to drag him up to the top of the pile. And even putting all of that aside, if someone really did kill Ziggy and they placed him on this pile, why? This is a very open public place. Someone is going to find him. You're going to get caught if you're the killer. And then, of course, there is the issue of what Ziggy was wearing. That brown three-piece suit he was wearing that had no soot on it, it wasn't his, and it wasn't put on right. The buttons were not lined up. It almost looked like somebody else who didn't know how to put a suit on had tried to dress Ziggy. And then Ziggy also did not have an undershirt on. It was just the jacket over his skin. And then also Ziggy had this totally bizarre haircut that looked like someone who didn't know how to give a haircut had cut his hair with scissors and said, good enough. And then, of course, you have this wound on the back of Ziggy's neck. Now, the wound itself was determined not to be fatal. It was a fairly deep cut, but it wouldn't have killed him. However, the most significant part of that wound was that green jelly that had been placed across the back of it. During Ziggy's autopsy, they were unable to figure out what this green jelly was, and they ran dozens and dozens of tests on it. And also, during the autopsy, the coroner would determine that Ziggy had actually died the same day he had been found. So he was doing something for 5 days between going missing and being on this coal pile, but nobody knows what it was. And as for his cause of death, the coroner was not entirely sure, but it did seem like he died of a heart attack. The coroner would search all of Ziggy's body for signs of some sort of fight he might have gotten into, some sort of defensive wound on his body, but there was nothing. However, the coroner did find there were very small burns on the back of his neck that were caused by acid, but it was unclear how those got there. When they inspected Ziggy's stomach, they determined that he had been eating and drinking regularly, and so he was not malnourished, he was not dehydrated, He was relatively healthy when he
That's
died.
crazy.
He just had this heart attack for unknown reasons, and apparently whatever gave him the heart attack scared him so badly, his face contorted in that horrible way. Ultimately, the coroner just kind of gave up and ruled that Ziggy had died of natural causes, and then the case was closed. But to this day, no one really has any idea how Ziggy went from going out to get groceries to winding up 25 miles away, dressed differently, with this haircut, with this jelly on him and acid burns, dead with this horrible look on his face on this coal pile. It doesn't make any sense. This case has become very famous because people say it is the best example of alien abduction. That Ziggy had left his house to get groceries, got abducted by aliens, and then over 5 days, these aliens did stuff to Ziggy, including cutting into his neck and dropping acid on him, and then they put that green stuff on the back of his neck. They dressed him the way they thought people dressed in the suit, but they didn't really do it right, and then they literally just dropped him on top of this coal pile, which would explain why he didn't have soot all over him. He was dead, they dropped him, and he just landed on the top of the coal pile. And even if you think that's totally far-fetched, keep in mind, still today, we do not know what that green jelly compound was on the back of his neck. It's literally never been identified, and people have been trying to figure it out for 40 plus years. Also, it's worth noting that one of the responding police officers, Alan Godfrey, claimed to have seen a UFO within weeks of finding Ziggy Adamski. So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's episode,
What you thinking?
Child.
What you thinking?
Look,
Sid?
at this point, hell, maybe get some aliens. No, I honestly have nothing. I'm like, honestly, I have nothing. Because at first I was like, I kind of was going somewhere. I'm like, yeah, it could be the kidnap or whatever. But I'm like, 25 miles away. Like, how big was this man? How tall was he? Like, I know he was like a little older or whatever, I guess. Oh, did he say his age? I can't remember. But anyway, I'm just trying to like figure out like who could have possibly, no one seen anything, no one heard anything. It seemed like the town pretty small. He wasn't that far away from home. Like, I'm just trying to figure out like what possibly could have happened. I'm like,
all right, can we do some realistic looking into it, like some realism behind it without like trying to like go into the direction people are trying to like in the
Go
video
ahead.
trying to lead. So my thing is, let's look at the time period.
mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Time period. Okay, we do know shit was going on back in those times, right? Right.
Yes.
So we do know. I just don't know about England. I don't, but y'all been in the country longer than a lot of people. So
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It is a possibility anybody could. 25 miles is not that far.
Yeah, it's not that far.
It's in the 80s, so people got cars. So somebody can drive you 25 miles away. It'll be different if you was found in a whole nother country. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on. Like, we can all be real. It's not a possibility of him possibly... Like, think about it. You want individual... Now, I do know coal miners do make good money.
Mm-hmm.
But he also had health concerns himself. And we don't know if he was working, like, full time still. And he was having to take care of his wife. You don't know what... A lot of times when people get caught up, one income... You working a hard job, your wife can't work, you probably got medical bills, right? So you probably fell into a financial hole and trying to keep things afloat. It's not far-fetched for men in the past have done things like that. They go take out money, go to a loan shark, don't tell anybody. And them people, a lot of times people don't play about their money like that. You know what I'm saying? And they'll tell you could have possibly borrowed. You never know what could have been. He possibly could have been on drugs. Could have been 1,000 different things could have led up to somebody wanting to snatch him off the street,
Mm-hmm.
torture him, or whatever. He could have ran up a bill. He could have been a gambler. We don't know. It's a lot of details we're missing out on to just jump to the conclusion of, hey, it's possibly aliens.
Yeah.
The green soot, we don't know. It could have been the wound was trying to heal itself. You know what I'm saying? Or they tried to put something on the wound and cross chemicals, and you know what I'm saying? It could have just been tortured. But they, like he did state, because I was like, when I first started, he was talking about the green stuff, I'm thinking acid. And like he said, he did have acid burns on him. So somebody could have overly tortured him and he died because of it's died of a heart attack and not necessarily flesh wounds. And it's a possibility he didn't have defensive wounds because we don't know if he was, you know what I'm saying? Only thing I'm thinking about, if he was tortured, and he would possibly be bound up. And so we didn't see any bound wounds, like hand tied up, legs tied up or stuff, then that can be, you know what I'm saying? And they possibly could have took his body 25 miles away because they don't want him to be able, make it harder for him to be able to be found.
Well, that wasn't the place to put him though. But okay.
Or it's a lot of possibilities before we go to aliens.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I'm like,
okay. Since you explained everything else, okay. Do you have an explanation for like the clothes not having anything, like any, like soot and stuff on it? Like
I said that earlier. They could have had him wrapped up in anything.
But I still feel like even if y'all had him wrapped up in something, even unwrapping him, you would have got his clothes like somewhat.
You could have. Most of the time, when you doing stuff like that, it's more than one person placing your body there.
Okay, well, if we're going with that, then okay, that's fine.
That's
I don't have an explanation. I'm not going with necessarily the alien thing either, but I really don't have an explanation because again, like you said, so much stuff is missing. I don't know, like your lifestyle or whatever the case may be or whatever it was. Yeah, a lot of information is missing. You know, there wasn't, you know, so I can't really say. I'm just like, I'm just kind of like, in my head, I'm like, well, that if I did something to somebody, I wouldn't have put them there unless you wanted them to be found.
Or, because there has been people who've been found in junkyards before. Because it's
a lot of times,
yard,
some people mind a junkyard is because you're going to blend in, whatever. So maybe you'll be overlooked. But I just feel like how he explained that, I don't know how the actual yard actually looked like for real. But
and Trevor could have probably, like, let's be real. Did Trevor really, like, he could have been there since that morning?
He could have. Who knows?
And he just overlooked them. Because
knows?
We don't know the angle.
But regardless, if he was there the morning or if he was there just the couple hours you went to lunch, still, I'm just like, I really have no. I don't know.
Let me reference one thing. Remember I forgot his name, but the case that happened in Wisconsin, and the dude had got he was supposed to have raped and murdered one woman previously before. Then remember they were looking in the car junkyard they had, and later on they had looked at every vehicle on the lot. Nobody recognized them. Like a week later, sometime later, I don't know exactly the time. It's been a while since I watched it. They found the woman's car there on the junkyard. And I'm like, how did y'all miss that first time? And then
they were saying, well, somebody placed it there after all of that.
Or it could have just possibly been somebody overlooked because you're looking at everything. And sometimes your eyes, you know what I'm saying? Especially, he could have been like, it could have been so routine for him. He probably didn't even 100% check that morning.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. I'm just trying. I don't know, to be real. I really don't.
It could be a plethora of things before you try to jump to the conclusion.
It could be many things. Yeah. Like, honestly, I don't know. I'm just like, and it was nighttime, right?
3:45 p.m. when they discovered the body.
No, I was talking about when he went out for the potatoes. I'm like, if it was, I can't remember.
I
don't even know if he stated, but I mean, it's dinner time, so I'm thinking it's like it's.
No, he went to get potatoes for the what's it called?
Regardless of the fact, I don't know what time it was. So I'm like, if it was nighttime, I'm like, well, maybe no one would have seen much.
And he's just circling blocks, so you got to think about: is people really out? You know what I'm saying? Amongst those blocks, are people walking those same directions? Is it a busy highway, or somebody just rode up on them and was like, "Hey, get in the car"? and he knew who it was, so he's not as frightened or put up a defense. He's like, damn, you know what I'm saying? And they like, yo, get in the car. And the clothing, you can say this, hey, if it is somebody, you know what I'm saying, whatever reason they took him, snatched him off the street, they possibly made him strip clothes from his original clothes, and that was just extra clothes that they had laying around. I tried to make it a little harder to be able to identify who he is. Because you already dropped him 25 miles away. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? So you don't want you want to make it a little harder, you know. Maybe they just didn't expect for him to be found so quick.
Well, maybe you shouldn't have put him there then. Because I just don't think that was a good spot to put like a yard where people are working in day
Nobody's
in and day
working
out.
Like for real besides Trevor.
He said workers was on the lot and truckers.
Nobody else found him for real besides Trevor. Trevor basically was at the lot by himself. Regardless of the fact,
if I'm gonna put something, I'm not gonna put it somewhere where people like if I'm.
That's why they put it at the very top.
Man, anyway.
Because most of the time, if you walking on a yard like that, you looking eye level, a little bit above eye level. You ain't looking at the tippity top. But Trevor.
Some people observe.
But let me also say this:
like
why the hell is Trevor looking at the tippity top?
It's just probably where, like, you don't know how far back he.
I ain't blaming Trevor, but you never know. Nobody is. You gotta speculate everybody in that situation. Well, I'll tell you something.
If I'm gonna do something, I definitely not gonna put you on my lot. Call the people to come and check.
People have.
I mean, I know people do that so that they can go ahead and try to rule themselves out and make it seem like whatever, cool, whatever.
Also, imagine this. I know for a fact, if we got bodies probably in water, people have dumped your body just in water. You got to also think about it. People have probably been buried in cement. People probably have been buried within stuff.
Buried
and bodies would never be found.
Long story short, child, I really don't have much because I feel like it's a lot that's, I guess, missing in the fact that I would need to know to kind of piece stuff together as far as like his everyday life. Did he have any, you know?
I'll just say this.
Like falling out with someone. Did he have like any type of, like, I don't know.
It's a lot of things you can possibly get to before you get to the alien story.
I guess.
So do you believe it possibly could have been an alien abduction?
I don't think it could have been an alien, but again, a lot of people do believe in a lot of stuff. Yeah. But I guess for a lot of people, I guess with the little green jelly-like substance on the back of his neck, and they've tested many things over
people
these
always
40 years.
associate stuff like that to aliens? Who never knows aliens can literally be walking on a planet looking like us?
Who said that they didn't?
But I'm just saying, everybody always thinking about alien. They always say that big head motherfucker with the big fingers and all. Yeah. Beep, 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 beep. Like, why the fuck?
But I guess with that, people's like, they're trying to figure, because like you've tested this against so many other things and nothing has come as just like this.
It could have been a mixture of things put together and formulate some shit. Or it could have been a chemical reaction with the skin.
I don't know, child.
And that you just can't pull back a read for.
I'm sorry, y'all, but I don't really have much for it. I guess if you want to go off of your...
It's just what I come up with.
I don't really have much because, again, like I said, I don't want to speculate that he was on drugs or speculate that he had money issues or whatever because it wasn't said. I don't know. It was never put out there, so I don't want to just assume that.
But a lot of people got hidden lifestyles that you...
But at the same time, I guess that you can... You know, in a sense, I guess if you're trying to figure out what happened, you can say those things. I mean, the police, I guess, you know, they come up with their, you know, assumptions and all of that. But I guess it could be a plethora of things. And I guess that's the thing. I'm like, I don't know.
Will we ever know?
I hate that whatever happened to him. I really do.
Whatever happened to him, he was frightened.
And the fact that no one knows, that it was never solved. You have no one. No one was ever caught. You know what I'm saying?
That's a lot of people, though.
It's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad, but yeah.
Good one for y'all to deliberate in the comments. Y'all let us know. I thought you would have came to more of a like.
I
You like, I ain't got shit for you, baby.
I
I'm just
don't
kidding.
have anything because I'm just like literally.
Could have been a plethora of things.
I'm just like from
It's
your
very
house
vague.
from your house to a 5-10 minute walk, however long it was gonna take them.
But people have been snatched
I
up
know,
like that.
but I'm just like, damn, like
It's been
what could have happened? I know
at a blink of an eye.
It only takes seconds.
Yeah.
It literally only takes seconds.
Somebody get in the car. You like somebody hop out on you real
and it's
fast.
like, has somebody possibly have been watching him to even
Yeah.
know that he? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So.
Or they get to drop on their location.
You're crazy. But
Y'all let us know,
please
man.
let us know.
I'm here for the comments on this one.
I
man.
am too. I'm gonna read them.
Yeah.
Cause I need to know. Pick my brain.
Yeah. I'm surprised you ain't have one though. But hey man, make sure y'all spam us up in the comments. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts about it in the comment section down below. But as always, I do go by the name DJ The Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are?
Sketchy.
Yeah.
Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar, 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 dollar.